do need to stop pretending confusion is the same thing as peace. The moment you start shrinking yourself to make somebody else comfortable, the truth is already late. My name is Malcolm Reed, and the winter my marriage broke open, Cleveland looked like a city made of wet concrete and old promises. I was 42, a map technician for the water department, the kind of man who sharpened pencils with a pocket knife because I liked the clean curl of cedar on my desk. I lived on the east side with my wife, Imani, in a narrow brick duplex with radiator heat that clicked all night and a front porch too small for 2 chairs unless one of them folded. On Sundays, I made lemon pound cake for New Hope Baptist repasts. On weekdays, I came home at 6 and liked things quiet. Imani was 38 and could make a room behave just by walking into it. She coordinated donor events for a hospital foundation downtown, and she had a gift for making rich people feel noble while they ate dry chicken under chandeliers. She kept index cards in her purse, color-coded her closet, and spoke softly when she was angry, which somehow hit harder than yelling. She hated open kitchen cabinets, cheap bath towels, and being interrupted when she was lining her lips in the hall mirror. I loved how exact she was. I also spent years mistaking her control for steadiness, and that confusion cost me more than I knew. Before this story goes any further, tell me this in the comments. If you overheard your spouse say they cannot stand you, would you confront them right away or disappear without a word? And if you already feel this story pulling you in, like the video, share it with someone who loves intense relationship drama. And subscribe for more original cheating wife stories, marriage betrayal stories, and emotional drama narratives like this one. We had been married 11 years. No children, though not for lack of wanting them. 2 miscarriages in 4 years had left our house with a strange kind of politeness, like even the walls were afraid to say too much. We did not talk about that enough. Instead, we talked about practical things. The gutters, my mother's blood pressure, her work gala at the Science Center, the price of eggs at Dave's Market. We had become a marriage that functioned beautifully from 10 feet away. Up close, there were hairline cracks and everything. I told myself that was adulthood. I told myself all long marriages sounded a little tired from inside. The day I heard her say she could not stand me was a Thursday in February, cold enough to make Lake Erie look mean. My office closed early because a burst main flooded part of the archive room. I stopped at a corner bakery on Kinsman and bought Imani the coconut cupcakes she liked. The ones with the buttercream too sweet for me. I remember wiping slush off my boots at the back door and hearing her voice before I saw her. She was in the laundry room off the kitchen, talking low and fast on speakerphone, and the old dryer was thumping like a second heartbeat behind her. "I cannot keep doing this with him," she said. "Every sound he makes gets on my nerves. I hear his key in the door, and my whole body tenses up." I froze with the pink bakery box in my hands. Then she laughed, but not in a happy way. "No, I am serious, Trina. Sometimes I look at him at the table and think, how did I end up married to somebody who feels this heavy? I do not know why the word heavy hit me harder than anything else. Maybe because I had spent months trying to be lighter, less needy, less present, less me. Trina must have said something, because Imani answered with a whisper that made me grip the counter. "He is a good man, and that almost makes it worse. I cannot even point to one big crime. I just cannot stand him in my space anymore. I feel trapped. There are moments when your body understands disaster before your mind can catch up." My ears rang. My palms went slick. I set the bakery box down so carefully it felt ridiculous, like I was trying not to wake something sleeping. I did not step into the laundry room. I did not ask one question. I backed out of my own kitchen like a thief. I stood in the mudroom with my coat still on and tried to decide what kind of man I wanted to be for the next 5 minutes. My father, before he died, believed confrontation fixed everything. He would kick a door, raise his voice, force a scene, then call that honesty. My mother lived with that weather for 27 years. I had promised myself I would never become a man who cornered a woman with hurt and volume just because he felt humiliated. So I made a different bad choice. Instead of confronting Imani, I disappeared. I told myself I needed one night to think. That was the lie I used to leave. I grabbed a duffel from the coat closet, stuffed in jeans, socks, my blood pressure pills, and the old flannel I wore when I mowed church grass in spring. I left my wedding ring on the bathroom sink without even thinking about why. I took $600 from the emergency coffee can above the refrigerator and drove west with my phone buzzing in the cup holder by the time I hit the shoreway. The sky had that dirty silver color Cleveland gets before more snow. I passed the clothes bait shops and marinas and kept going until I reached Port Clinton, where my late uncle's fishing trailer still sat in a faded row near the water. My Uncle Percy had left me a key years earlier. After summer, he taught me how to clean perch and stop apologizing every time I took up room. The trailer smelled like minnows, old coffee, and cedar bait. There was a quilt on the fold-out sofa and a coffee mug shaped like a largemouth base. I let myself in after dark, sat on the edge of the narrow bed, and listened to the furnace struggle awake. I should have called my sister, Rochelle. I should have called Imani and said I heard you, and I need time. Instead, I turned my phone face down and stared at the wall until morning. By the second day, I had built a routine out of not thinking straight. I walked to a diner by the marina where the waitress called everybody honey, but meant it differently depending on the person. I drank burnt coffee, ate eggs I could barely taste, and watched gulls fight over trash in the parking lot. Then I went back to the trailer and sat at the little laminate table with one of Uncle Percy's domino sets, arranging the pieces into lines I never played. My phone stayed off. That was decision number 2, though I did not understand its size yet. I chose silence because silence made me feel less exposed than answers would. On the 4th day, I turned the phone on long enough to check if my boss had fired me. Instead, I got hit with a wall of panic. 29 missed calls from Imani, 11 from Rochelle, 3 from Reverend Coleman, 1 from a number I did not recognize that later turned out to be a detective. There were texts from neighbors, church members, even Mr. Boyd from the barbershop on Lee Road asking if I was all right. I opened one message from Imani. Malcolm, please answer. I am begging you. I do not know where you are or what you think happened, but please come home. Something in me wanted to feel satisfied reading that. I hate admitting that, but it is true. Hurt people are not always noble. A small, ugly part of me wanted her frightened because I had been frightened in my own kitchen. Then shame came right behind it. I turned the phone off again and walked down to the water with my hands in my pockets. The lake was steel gray, flat and cold, and I kept thinking about the way she had said my whole body tenses up. That is not a careless sentence. That is not a misunderstanding born from one bad afternoon. That is a truth somebody has rehearsed in private. The person who finally dragged me back toward reality was not Imani. It was Mr. Lester, an older black man who ran a tackle shop down the road and remembered Uncle Percy from the old days. He saw me buying crackers and instant noodles 3 days in a row and asked me whether I was hiding from trouble or taking a break from it. I said neither. He looked at me over the register and said, "Men always say neither when the answer is both." I laughed because I had to. Then he told me something I still think about. Absence does not make the truth clearer. It just gives lies room to redecorate. I wish I could say that sentence sent me running home. It did not. What sent me home was Rochelle pulling up beside the trailer in her blue Honda with her church hat still on, even though it was a Tuesday. She got out, stood in the gravel, and looked at me like I had turned into somebody she did not know. Rochelle is 2 years younger than me, a social worker with strong forearms and very little patience for dramatic men. She hugged me first. Then she slapped the back of my head. Then she cried. All 3 felt deserved. She filed a missing person report. Rochelle said once we were inside, "The police went by your job. Reverend Coleman put your name on the prayer list. Half the church thinks you had a breakdown. And your wife has been on television with your college graduation photo." I sat down so hard the folding chair protested. "Television?" Rochelle nodded. "Channel 5. Outside your house. Looking like a widow whose casserole dish just came back empty." She did not smile. "Malcolm, whatever happened, you do not get to vanish and let people imagine the worst." I told her what I heard. Every word. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, Rochelle rubbed her forehead the way she did after long days with families in crisis. "I believe you heard what you heard," she said. I also believe disappearing gave her time to become the injured party. That landed hard because it felt true. Do you think she meant me? I asked. Rochelle gave me a look. Who else would make her body tense when she heard the key? We sat with that. Then she added, but hearing somebody's private contempt and knowing what to do with it are two different things. You need the rest of the truth, not just the part that cuts you. I rode back to Cleveland with my sister and stared at mile markers while she talked about practical things. My leave at work, the detective who wanted to close the report, the stack of casseroles at my house, most of them from church women who would absolutely want their dishes returned. When we got to my block, there were no news vans, thank God, but there were fresh footprints in the snow up my front steps. Somebody had salted my walk. The porch light was on in daylight. That small detail almost broke me. It was the light I always forgot to replace. Imani never forgot the lights. She opened the door before I could knock. I had imagined anger, accusations, maybe relief wrapped in resentment. What I saw was worse. She looked exhausted, not in a theatrical way, but in a hollowed-out one. Her scarf was crooked. Her eyes were red, without makeup trying to rescue them. For 1 second, neither of us moved. Then she grabbed the front of my coat with both hands and pressed her forehead into my chest so hard I rocked backward. Do not ever do that again, she said, and her voice was raw, cracked through the middle. Do not ever make me live like that again. I let her hold me because I did not know what else to do. The house smelled like bleach, candle wax, and too many flowers. There were foil pans on the dining table and my missing poster on the counter beside a bowl of bruised bananas. She looked over my shoulder at Rochelle, who simply said, I brought him back. The rest is yours. Then my sister left us standing there with all the heat and silence in the world. Imani took 1 step back and looked at me carefully, the way nurses look at people who might bolt. Tell me why, she said. Please. I did not sit down. I did not want comfort softening what I had to say. I came home early. I told her. You were in the laundry room with Trina. You said you could not stand me. You said hearing my key made your body tense. You said I felt heavy in your life. Her face changed slowly, like somebody lowering blinds over a bright window. She did not deny it. That mattered. She pressed her lips together and looked at the floor. I said those things, she answered after a while. I did. There was honesty in that, but not innocence. Then why all this? I asked, gesturing at the casseroles, flowers, printed flyers, the entire public grief display. Why the police? Why the church? Why act like you were desperate to get me back if you could not even stand me in the house? She sat down at the dining table and folded her hands. Because both things were true, she said. I was angry enough to say cruel things, and then you disappeared, and I thought maybe I would never get the chance to take any of them back. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. That does not make sense. It does, she said. It is just ugly. We talked until after dark. Or maybe talking is generous. We confessed in pieces and defended ourselves in pieces, and left the most dangerous pieces sitting between us untouched. Imani said she had been carrying resentment for months, that I had become careful with her in a way that felt suffocating. After the miscarriages, I started treating every hard feeling in the house like glass, and in doing that I stopped being a husband and became a monitor. She said I hovered. I over-explained. I watched her face before saying simple things. I felt managed, she said quietly, and I started resenting you for trying to be kind. What she said hurt because there was truth in it. After the second loss, I did begin checking every emotional doorframe before I walked through it. I wanted to protect her, but protection can become surveillance when fear is holding the pen. I told her that. I also told her none of that explained contempt. Not really. She nodded and said she knew. Then she cried, quietly, the kind of crying that looks more like fatigue than sadness. We agreed on one thing that night. I would stay in the guest room for a while, and we would not perform normally just because both of us were embarrassed by the truth. For about 10 days, our house became a place where people washed mugs immediately, so there would be less evidence of living. We moved around each other politely. She left me coffee in the thermos on mornings when I worked early. I shoveled the walk before she woke up. We went together to tell Reverend Coleman I was safe and that there had been a personal misunderstanding. He looked relieved but disappointed in the way pastors get when human mess refuses to fit into a tidy testimony. Everybody wanted a clean explanation. We gave them none. Still, something underneath all that civility felt wrong, not just broken, concealed. The first thing that bothered me was how often Imani started smiling at her phone and then flattening her face when I entered a room. Don't panic. Not guilt exactly. More like compartmentalizing. The second thing was Julian Vance. He had been around before, but now I noticed him everywhere once I started paying attention. Julian was 45, smooth-skinned, trim beard, real estate broker, member of our church finance committee, and one of those men who always wore a watch heavy enough to announce itself. He and Imani worked together sometimes on donor housing events. He had a slow voice and expensive sneakers, and he liked being useful where people could see it. During the week I was missing, Julian had apparently done plenty. He printed flyers. He called hospitals. He drove Imani to the detective precinct when her hands were shaking too badly for her to manage downtown traffic. Everybody told me this like it was proof of his goodness. Even Imani said, Julian really stepped up when things were ugly. The sentence itself was innocent. The way she said his name was not. It was too soft, too familiar around the edges. I hated that I noticed. I hated even more that my body noticed before my pride did. Suspicion has a smell. It smells like old fear waking up. I tried to correct for paranoia. That part matters. I did not want to become a man who built a case out of tone and timing, because his ego had been wounded. So when I saw Julian at church carrying folding chairs with his sleeves rolled up and his wedding band flashing under the fellowship hall lights, I spoke to him normally. He clasped my hand in both of his and said, Brother, I'm just glad you're home. I thanked him. His grip was warm. His eyes did not waver. If he had been acting, he was better at it than most people I had known. That frightened me more. One Saturday, about 3 weeks after I came back, I took my car to get detailed because inside smelled like stale coffee and marina bait for my self-imposed exile. While cleaning out the trunk, I found a paper wristband under the spare umbrella, blue satin finish, stamped with gold lettering, Winter Lights Gala, the Hospital Foundation's annual fundraiser. I remember that event because Imani had told me she came home exhausted and stayed late breaking down centerpieces. The date on the band was from the Thursday before I disappeared. The same Thursday I overheard her. I held that flimsy strip of paper like it was a pulse. That evening I asked her, as casually as I could, whether the gala had gone well. She said yes, same donors, same speeches, same overcooked salmon. I asked whether she stayed late after. She said, very late. Why? Then I showed her the wristband. For half a second, maybe less, she stared at it too long. Oh, she said, that must have fallen out of my purse. She reached for it. I did not hand it over. Did Julian go? I asked. She frowned. A lot of people went, Malcolm. It was a fundraiser. The answer did not fit the question. That mattered too. I slept badly that night and woke before dawn to the sound of the radiator tapping like fingernails. Around 6, while Imani was in the shower, her phone lit up on the dresser. I had never gone through her phone in our marriage. Not once. My mother taught me that privacy should survive even in intimacy. But there are moments when values bend under accumulated evidence. I stood there arguing with myself while steam drifted on the bathroom door. Then I looked away. I chose not to touch it. That was another fork in the road. I told myself if the truth needed burglary, maybe I was not ready for the truth. The truth came anyway, just not from where I expected. 2 days later, a woman came to my office at the water department asking for me by name. She was tall, beautiful, and dressed too sharply for municipal fluorescent lights. Her name was Bernice Vance, Julian's wife. She did not waste time. She asked whether we could speak somewhere private, and I took her to the basement break room, beside the vending machines. She set a manila envelope on the table between us and said, I think our spouses have been making fools of both of us, and I am done being polite about it. Inside the envelope were copies, hotel receipts from Independence and Beechwood, printed screenshots of text records. A photo of Julian's gray Audi outside a short-term rental in Tremont. Then, finally, the one that made my stomach fold in on itself. A picture of Imani getting into that Audi outside the hospital garage, her hand on his arm like it had been there 1,000 times. Bernice did not dramatize any of it. She sat with a straight back and said, "I've been gathering this for 4 months because every time I asked Julian directly, he lied beautifully. Then your disappearance happened, and suddenly he was at your house every day helping search." I could not speak for a while. The vending machine hummed. Somewhere above us, pipes knocked through the building. Bernice kept going, because she was clearly past the point of needing comfort. "I think the affair started last summer," she said. "Maybe earlier. I know they were at the Winter Lights Gala together. I know he paid for at least 2 hotel rooms and 1 apartment rental by the hour." She slid one receipt closer to me. "I am not here for revenge. I needed you to know because I watched your wife on the news crying for you, and I thought either she loves him too or she loves attention more than truth." That sentence could have been cruel if Bernice had said it with heat. She said it with exhaustion instead. I asked the question I already knew the answer to. "Are you sure it was my wife?" Bernice gave me a look that did not insult me, which somehow hurt more. "Mr. Reed, I am a tax attorney. I do not bring strangers envelopes unless I am sure." I took the papers and sat there long after she left. There is a special humiliation in being the last person given the facts of your own life. It makes every memory retroactive. It makes kindness look staged. I did not confront Imani right away. That surprises people when I tell this story. But shock slows some men down instead of speeding them up. I drove to Euclid Avenue, parked near Lakeview Cemetery, and sat looking at bare trees with the envelope on the passenger seat. I had options. I could go home screaming and scatter the whole marriage across the floor. I could call Julian first and let another husband hear what helplessness sounded like in my throat. Instead, I called Mr. Boyd, my barber, because I trusted him with ugly truths. He closed his shop for lunch and told me to come sit in the empty chair. A barber shop in the middle of a weekday is a holy place for men deciding whether to ruin something. Mr. Boyd put no cape around me, did not pick up clippers, just let me sit in front of the mirror while gospel played low from a radio near the shoe shine stand. I handed him the envelope. He flipped through it once and set it down. "You know enough," he said. "Now your next decision is about your dignity, not your evidence." I asked him what that meant. He said, "Do not chase truth from people already committed to denying you. Bring what you know, ask what you need, and listen once." I confronted her that night at the dining table where she had once admitted contempt. I laid the hotel receipts, the photo, the printed call log between us. I did not raise my voice. That seemed to rattle her more than if I had. Her face drained in stages, not all at once. She looked at the papers, then at me, then back at the papers like they might rearrange into innocence if she waited long enough. Finally, she covered her mouth with one hand and whispered, "How did you get this?" That question ended the marriage before any confession did. It told me her first instinct was logistics, not remorse. Bernice brought it to my job. I said, "So let me save you some time. I do not want a puzzle. I want a timeline." Imani sat very still. Outside, a bus hissed to a stop at the corner and pulled away. Our radiator clicked. The ordinary sounds made the room feel cruel. "It started in August," she said at last, "after the donor golf weekend." I nodded once, because if I moved more than that, I might have thrown something. She kept her eyes on the table. It was supposed to be temporary. Stupid. An escape. Then it became something I was managing instead of ending. I asked whether she had loved him. She cried before answering, which irritated me more than if she had stayed dry-eyed. "No," she said, not in the way love deserved that word. I asked whether she had met me in the laundry room. "Yes," she whispered. "I was talking about you, about us, about the pressure coming home carrying guilt and having you be kind to me." There it was, not just betrayal, but the ugliest version of it. My goodness had become one more inconvenience in the architecture of her deceit. And the search, I asked, "Was that guilt too?" She looked up then, finally. "No, that was terror. I believed her, which was the worst part. I believed she had betrayed me and still panicked when I disappeared. Human beings are not neat enough to be one thing at a time. When you vanished, she said, I thought you knew everything. Then I thought maybe you had hurt yourself. Then I thought if I never saw you again, the last true thing between us would be all the lies. She started crying harder. Julian tried to help because he was scared too. I should have stopped him. I should have told the truth then. I laughed, bitter and low. Then would have been an excellent time. We stayed at the table for nearly 3 hours. I asked every question I could survive asking. How many times? Where? Who knows? Whether Trina knew. She did. Whether anybody at church suspected it. 2 people, maybe. Whether Julian had promised to leave Bernice. He had not. That detail did not comfort me. It just made the whole affair feel smaller and sadder. By midnight, the air in the room felt used up. Imani asked whether I wanted her to leave that night. I looked at her, at the woman I had chosen, the woman who had once ironed my mother's funeral shirt without being asked, the woman who had also made a fool of me in layers. Yes, I said. My voice barely sounded like mine. Not because I am punishing you, because I cannot breathe with you in this house tonight. She nodded as though she had prepared for that answer in advance. She packed one suitcase, her laptop, the framed photograph of her late grandmother from the mantel, and a pair of dress shoes she had left by the front door for 2 days. She did not ask for a hug. She did not ask whether I still loved her. She left her keys on the table and called a rideshare because Julian was no longer an option and Rochelle was too loyal to me. The next months were not dramatic. That is the part people never expect. No screaming scenes on front lawns. No public collapse in church. Just paperwork, changed passwords, one visit from an appraiser, and long silences where a marriage used to live. Bernice filed first. I filed 3 weeks later. Imani moved into a 1-bedroom in University Heights and started commuting to a smaller nonprofit job in Akron because the foundation let her resign quietly before donor gossip got louder. Julian lost his wife, his house, and is standing at church in slow, expensive installments. None of that made me feel healed. Consequences are not medicine. They are just consequences. I saw Imani once that summer at a fish fry in the church basement because life does not care when you are ready for awkwardness. She was carrying a pan of baked beans and wearing a plain blue dress I had never seen before. We spoke beside the folding tables while children ran in church shoes they were meant to keep clean. She looked older, not ruined, just stripped of polish. I am in therapy, she said. For real this time. I nodded. Good. She glanced toward the kitchen. I still hate that I made your kindness feel foolish. That was the first apology she gave me that did not sound arranged. I live alone now in a smaller place near Shaker Square, above a bookstore that closes too early and smells like dust when the heat kicks on. I still sharpen pencils with my pocket knife. I still make lemon pound cake, though now I take the extra loaf to Mr. Boyd or Rochelle instead of bringing it home. Some nights I think about that Thursday in the laundry room and wonder what would have happened if I had walked in immediately, cupcakes in hand, and forced the air clear. Maybe I would have learned the truth sooner. Maybe she still would have lied. What I know now is simpler. Disappearing did not save my dignity. Facing the whole truth finally did. What stays with me from this story is not just the affair. It is the chain of choices around it. I left instead of asking. She performed fear instead of confessing. Julian helped search for me while hiding in plain sight, and that detail still turns my stomach, because deception gets bold when everybody around it prefers appearances. Pay attention to the split between private truth and public image. If someone's words in the laundry room and their tears on the front porch do not match, do not rush to explain it away. Slow down, get facts, and protect your dignity before you protect the story. If this story hit you hard, do not leave without liking the video, sharing it, and subscribing for more gripping first-person relationship drama, cheating spouse stories, and original emotional betrayal narratives like this one. And before you go, comment with one word for Imani: guilt, fear, selfishness, or regret. I read those comments, and I want to know whether you think this marriage was doomed from the laundry room moment or from the first lie that followed. The end.